and welcome to BASECAMP, the best way to start your day. I'm Jack, and I'm really glad that you joined us. BASECAMP is a tool that helps you develop the habit of spending daily time with God. And welcome back. I hope each of you enjoyed your holiday season, and that it was awesome that you're able to get some good time with family, and have a break from work and school and whatever else you're doing. But we're glad to be back with BASECAMP, so let's jump right in. Today's going to be a little different because a lot has happened so far in our story and it was so long ago, so I want to attempt to do an overview of what has happened, how we arrived where we are today, and where we are headed. So, let's dive in. Our story started in Exodus chapter 1 with the Hebrew people in slavery in Egypt, and there's trouble brewing. The new Pharaoh is worried about the growing number of Hebrews, so he enslaves them. He even orders the midwives to kill Hebrew baby boys. And it's a dire situation, and it looks like it calls for a hero. Then we are introduced to this baby that survived the demands of the king of Egypt and was left in a river in an ark to survive. He was found by Pharaoh's daughter and now is in the house of Pharaoh, being taken care by his own mother, and we know this baby as Moses. And some time has passed, and the king of Egypt at that time had died, and this opens a new chapter in the story. The Hebrew people have been suffering for 40 years now, and they cry out to God for help. Their prayers set something incredible in motion, and God hears them and starts to act, but not for another 40 years, because Moses messes up and runs away, but God has very different plans for Moses. So, God visits Moses in a burning bush and gives him very, very clear instructions, and Moses obeys. Moses returns to Egypt and approaches the Pharaoh and asks him to let his people, the Hebrew people, go. The Pharaoh refuses, so God acts. The plagues start rolling in. Water turned to blood. Gnats covered the earth like dust. Frogs jumped all over everything, and then came the flies. The death of the livestock, and finally gross boils on everyone's skin, and still Pharaoh would not let God's people go. So it was time to take it up a notch. The death of the livestock and then the last plague came through and killed all of the firstborn children that did not hear the warning from God and obey God's commands to rub the blood on the doorpost of a lamb. And with that plague, the Pharaoh finally lets God's people go. So God fulfills his promise to all of the Hebrews, and they leave Egypt, only to be stopped between a rock and a hard place, the Red Sea, and an angry Pharaoh who wants his kingdom to stay the way that it is. And once again, our hero, Yahweh, comes through for his people. God splits the Red Sea and lets his people pass through on dry land and swallows up the Egyptian army that follows them. God's people are free and worship him for what he has done, the Passover feast, the crossing of the Red Sea, and now they're in a desert completely free from all danger of Egypt, heading towards the land that the Lord had promised them all the way back in Genesis. And this is where we pick back up our story. So go ahead and open up your Bibles to Exodus chapter 15, verses 22 through 27. We're just going to be reading this short section to see where we are picking up our story and start to see where we're going. So go ahead, it'll be on the screen, and read it now. A new challenge has come into play. The Hebrew people are in the desert, with the desert comes a lot of complications. Mainly, they're really thirsty and there's not much good water to be found. So they turn to their leader Moses and ask for help. And then Moses in turn turns to God and asks for help. And Yahweh does another miracle and turns bitter, gross water into something that is good to drink with just a piece of wood that he shows Moses. This shows the people that God is still on their side. God is still the hero of the story. He is still the provider, and he is still in control of everything. But as we will quickly see, not all the Hebrew people believe that that is the case. They still doubt God. They think that they're going to die in the wilderness, in the desert. They even regret leaving Egypt in slavery. But all that stuff we'll begin to look at in the next base camp. So we'll see you there.